Hello, Lodi. Welcome to another View from 202. Great to see you all this evening. My guests are Adam Steinberg, President of our school board, and Vince Bruenig, District Admin. Is that what's your official?
District Administrator.
Cool. So they've joined me. We are going to talk about a whole lot of stuff. I'm guessing this will be a pretty wide-ranging conversation. But to kick us off, I just want to do some reminders for the community about some events coming up. Mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 3rd. 5 to 8 o'clock will be National Night Out, and we're going to be over at Haberman Park this year, and we're blocking off Fair Street from Main Street all the way up to Pond Street, and all the ambulances and fire trucks will be parked out on the street so everybody can go poke around. I guess we're getting something called an MRAP vehicle from the county, cool. Some sort of armored thingy that'll be there for half the time, so the kids can check that out. We've requested med flight, so if they're available, hopefully they'll be landing nearby. And a bunch of vendors and booths will be in Haberman Park. We're hoping for a couple food trucks so you can come and get a nosh, check things out, and your family can enjoy all the activities, and then maybe go over to Gorse Park and cop a squat and enjoy your food, which would be lovely. So plan to come out. We're going to celebrate our first responders and thank them for everything they do to keep us all safe and healthy. At the same time, we're going to celebrate our community. So I hope you can come and join us. And we're going to keep celebrating our community a week and a half later with Susie Day, which is actually sort of Susie weekend. Susie the Duck Day is on August 14th this year. And there's a whole weekend of stuff going on. So Friday night is the FFA tractor pull over at the fairgrounds. Saturday morning is the library fun run over at the elementary school. The parade will start at 10:30, I think, or 10 o'clock. Check your event schedule. Around 10 o'clock, the parade will start. That's usually a big parade, although we don't have big elections this year, so it probably won't be quite as big, but still probably a good hour-long parade. There will be a vendor's market over on Water Street. We're closing Water Street for the day. There will be a band and a beer garden, and they're going to dump the ducks, I think, up on the Pleasant Street Bridge at 1 o'clock. And so a duck race, you can start buying your duck tickets probably in the next week or so. And the duck race will end in the creek behind La Grata wine bar. So a full day of activities, and then you can top it off with the FFA's demo derby that night over at the fairgrounds again. And I believe there's a band out at Lucky's and other stuff happening on the lake. So come and celebrate all things Lodi and Susie the Duck. So mark your calendars for that. And then
before you go on, what type of vendor fair market is going to be over there?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
Okay.
It's a new thing. Heidi LaHue, who owns Winnie the Winnebago, is on the chamber board, and they've said the interest from vendors. So I'm guessing some arts and crafts kind of things, some food trucks. They've been hoping to get some food vendors there. So hoping to make it just a downtown festival kind of feel. Nice. Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention Friday night also is the Chalk the Walk fundraiser over in Gorse Park. That's a fundraiser to benefit Reach Out Lodi, and they're having a sidewalk chalk artist come in. Oh, wow. And I think he's going to do a square, but families are going to get to decorate, and then he's going to be the judge, and they're going to give out some prizes that night. So that'll be a fun Friday night thing to do down in Gorse Park. And you can go listen to, you'll be able to hear the tractor pull quite well from Gorse Park, but you can go actually watch it at the fairgrounds. So lots of great stuff happening. The city, we put the infrastructure in now, or will be putting it in, so we can have electricity over on Spring Street. So we're hoping that can be kind of an enhancement to, since our main street is a city or a state highway, it's a little difficult to just close it down every Saturday to have a fun shopping day. So hopefully we'll see more things happening over there. And then, of course, our beloved Brewbarbecue is back this year. Awesome. The event of the fall, in my opinion. And I can't forget, I back up Labor Day. We've got our fair this year, which should have happened last weekend. Thanks to everybody who turned out for the movie. Adam said it was a lovely evening, and that's fabulous.
Very nice evening.
Good. So the fair will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of Labor Day weekend, and we'll have lots of visitors in town for that. And then the Brewbarbecue is on Saturday, September 18th. And they'll have the usual rib vendors and salsa competition and homebrew competition. VIP tickets will be going on sale soon. A VIP, I can't remember how much, they're either 50, I think they're like $50, but then you get to sample ribs or salsa and eat the good stuff. So that should be a lovely, lovely event as well. There is a wine walk scheduled for the fall, but it's in November and I don't remember the exact date. So there's lots of fun. In October, of course, is Ice Age Trail stuff, and they're back doing their full moon hikes and tyke hikes and lots of fabulous stuff happening in the community. Yay! So,
So I just want to compliment you. You're looking at a piece of paper, but there's hardly any notes on here, and you just like said all that stuff,
right?
With all those dates and times and things.
why,
It's
thank
amazing.
you. You caught
That's
me at a
amazing.
good point. No, I'm kidding. Promoting our community
Yeah,
is
it's amazing.
what I love to do. It's
Yeah,
easy
great.
to do. So thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Is it raining? Sorry, it's storming outside. I thought I just heard something. Oops. Kind of segueing into other good things. So we came off, I want to thank you both for taking time to be here tonight. And we've come off, as an educator myself at the higher ed level, we've come off a year that none of us could have imagined, and a year and a half. And first, I want to say thank you to you guys. I want to thank the school board. I want to thank our teachers. I want to thank, of course, the parents and students. But it has been a really challenging year. What I can say from my vantage point, and what I want all of us to always remember, is those of us who are in elected positions, and as an educator myself, those of us who are teachers, educators in general, this is a calling. People don't choose to become a school board member or a city alder for the glory, because that is short and far between. They do this because they deeply, deeply care about our community and care about our children. And as difficult as decisions were, and you may have disagreed with them along the way, please remember that you can't fault people's desire to take care of our children and our community and keep people safe and healthy. And these decisions were agonizing. Vince and I talk every other week, and these decisions were agonizing for them and for the school board and the faculty. And no matter what they decided, they weren't going to make everybody happy. So my hat's off to you for doing that for the last year and a half and keeping our community as safe as humanly possible. And
well, again, just to echo that, I just appreciate all the partnerships that we have. I mean, our faculty and staff were phenomenal. Having to learn how to teach virtually, never been trained, becoming a brand new teacher. That's what it felt like, a brand new teacher almost on steroids. You just had to learn all this new stuff, trying to stay ahead of the students. And our parents, they partnered so closely with our teachers. They were, even though if parents agreed or disagreed, they still partnered with our teachers and still were able to provide and work with us to make sure we had a high quality education for all of our students. I mean, even when people were upset with the decision that was made, after some emails back and forth, most of them were like, yeah, we get it. It's a very difficult decision. We understand you're in a no-win situation. And I just appreciate the Board of Education because everything I gave them, all the information, all the research I gave them on all sides of these issues, they took the time, they read it, they would go through it, they'd bring their own and share back more information. And they really took every single decision they had to make very seriously and dug into them. And again, whether you agree with them or not, it's a very difficult job. They had numerous meetings to try to figure this all out. And our Board of Education worked very hard throughout this whole entire process. And, as you said, the elected official is not a school board member is not a glorious position, right? It's a service position, and they served our community and served it well. And my hat's off to all of them for all their time and effort and what they did on behalf of our students. So it was a very difficult year, but we also learned a lot, and we'll take a lot of that moving forward as we move into next year, which will also come with some difficult decisions as we walk into the next school year. But again, I'm confident that our district administrative team and our staff will put together a plan that has the best interest of our students and our community at heart, and we'll move forward on it.
That's great. That's great.
So thank you. But the one thing to add to that is that most people, I don't think, realize that there's almost 1,500 kids in the school district. And over 200 employees is a lot of people who work there. And then the larger community around encompasses a very large area. And so making those decisions, many people would say, well, that's not good for me, or that's not good for me, but it's not always about me or you or individuals. It's about all of those people. And so trying to make decisions that fit for all of those employees and all of those students and everyone in the community, that makes sense. So,
Yeah. And for those of us in these sorts of positions in the last year and a half, it was like trying to build a house on quicksand.
Yeah.
You just never had a stable foundation because it was a brand new virus. We'd never dealt with a pandemic in recent past like this. The global world that we live in it just changed everything. So the stuff we knew one day was, people say, well, science didn't make up their mind. Well, science was learning like all the rest of us.
The other thing too is on the school board, you have 7 individuals who are really great, but they're not experts in everything. And so we would go out and look and ask experts about the pandemic, and they would come back with, well, sorry, I'm not going to give you a recommendation. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And it was very difficult to have people who had positions, in my opinion, who were responsible to make those decisions, not make those decisions. And so then it fell back to the school board to make those decisions. And that's not the way to fight a pandemic. It's just not you need a bigger decision.
Plan.
A bigger plan.
So. Hopefully this country will not be caught with its pants down again. But
again, we will always make those decisions.
Yes.
That is our job.
Yes,
and we will do
absolutely.
that. Whether people like the decisions we make or not, we're still going to make those decisions.
Absolutely. And I'm going to, excuse me, my stomach is hungry, apparently. That's embarrassing. This is a great time to put in a not so shameless plug to get a vaccination. If I will say the Delta variant scares the ever living daylights out of me. What we're seeing happening in states with low vaccination rates. I heard one of the healthcare leaders, I think it was Dr. Shah, saying within the last 2 days, either get vaccinated or you're going to get to the Delta variant. There really isn't any option in between. This variant is so contagious, and it seems to be really impacting people who are getting quite sick, worse than the other variants that we've had to deal with. It's much more communicable. So we ain't out of the woods yet. We've been doing some wonderful celebrating and reconnecting, but keep your masks handy, folks.
To add to that, though, working with virologists, is the Delta virus or variant is also much worse for you. It goes after your brain, your heart, and your lungs much quicker than the other versions did. And so you definitely do. I mean, the other version of COVID, you could get sick and most people would be healthy afterwards. This new variant doesn't bode as well.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
And
there's a vaccine clinic this weekend, right?
Yes.
This Friday.
Easy to
from,
get
from 10 to 2 at Reach Out Lodi. You don't even have to make an appointment.
On Friday?
This Friday.
Thank you.
You can go. They're giving the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer, and then they will come back in 3 weeks and give you the second dose of Pfizer if that's what you have. So for students who are 12 to 18, they're only eligible for the Pfizer, but anybody else can get the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer.
That's great.
So that's this weekend. And again, just a reminder, I get a weekly notice from Columbia County, and we had 4 deaths in Columbia County due to COVID this week. It's still there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What was that?
We post that every week.
Oh, the plug for the Lodi Valley Chronicle. Blaze is getting the information out there. The county report is always on Blaze's website. Thanks, Blaze. That's great. Haven't poked around, I guess. That's awesome. And I will say it was frustrating to be a public official and a school in any role with kind of what you were alluding to, the lack of decision-making and strategy from a bigger level than leaving each municipality and locality on its own. And God bless the people who work at our county level, but I don't know what resources they have. And it was difficult, and the guidance was pretty limited. And Anyway, so stay tuned. Get your vaccination, though. Please, please, please get your vaccination. You know, we are so blessed to be in this moment of time with these scientific discoveries. And after my second shot, I had like 8 hours of not feeling great. But I tell you, not invincibility, but the feeling of freedom and being able to hug my loved ones and reconnect with people and not have to worry. And there's just nothing better than the peace of mind.
Right.
And people are really wigged out about the adverse effects and the website that tracks them. But you got to remember, folks, over 100 million people in this country have gotten fully vaccinated. So if there are 400,000 adverse effects on that, you'll get that from the flu shot. You'll get that from just about anything. Believing in the science and in the technology that we are fortunate to have at this point in time just makes more sense than ever.
But not everyone who gets the vaccination or the vaccine has side effects.
Yeah, most
many
people
people don't.
Yeah,
so,
my husband
right.
had a little sore arm for a day or two.
That's
you know?
it.
Yep. So yes, you're absolutely right. So don't plan on getting side effects.
Because not everybody
It was,
does.
yeah, no, I have lots of friends who have gotten, my whole family, I think, got them, and most people felt just fine. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just talk about my own experience at school. So I was honored to be asked by the school board, the school district, asked a group of, I just did this the other night, 12 of us out of the community, to work on the school, to be a planning, we were called the Vision Element Study Team. And so I've gotten to work with Adam and Vince and these wonderful 12 people and Maureen Palmer from the school district on this project since, I think our first meeting was early March, right?
Yep.
And it has been just a wonderful experience, really wonderful experience. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be with Heather Hatley. We were able to present the strategic plan and the mission to the school board on Monday night. And I'm really proud of the work we did, but I'm especially proud of the process.
It was amazing.
I'm proud of our community for 148 people to commit 2 nights of 3 hours each night to come and have conversations about our hopes and dreams and worries for our children and the children in the community. It was really amazing.
It was.
What are your thoughts about all of this?
So to being on the school board, I've been on there for 8 years, is you're trying to represent people in the community, and you don't always hear from all the people in the community. And so this was a way to go to the community and say, what do you think? What do you feel? Where do you want to go? How do you want to go there? And to get that response, and then to package that all up so that people on the board could have that knowledge. It's just an amazing resource to have. So thank you to the community for providing that to us.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks to the Board of Education for their leadership of putting this forward, because when a lot of districts were just focused on the now, especially with COVID, you're just focused on the now. Lodi had the sense to focus also on the future. Like, how are we going to pull people? This kind of activity not only gives us focus for the future, but it also builds community. Like, and with everything going on with COVID, there was some fracture in the community. It brought people together to have conversations and just remind us of the commonalities that we all have. We may have some disagreements, but all said and done, most of us who live in Lodi have a lot of the same values and a lot of the same beliefs, and there's a lot more that brings us together than tears us apart. And so this kind of process helps do that. So what the board did was map out the community, because they wanted to make sure they heard from all different levels of the community. So they mapped out the community, selected people that represented one or multiple of those areas to put this process together. And the board contacted those people. We, as Ann just said, she was one of the 12 that answered that call and came, and they did the same thing. They mapped out the community all over again and tried to make sure that they reached out to, so we heard from every different aspect of the community. Plus, we opened it up to the entire community to come in. And compared to a lot of strategic planning processes, if you came to the community conversations, which the committee did a great job of putting together, you didn't see board members sitting at the tables. You didn't see administrators running this meeting. You saw community members. Our Vision Element Study Team are the one who ran this whole process. We had a facilitator. I was there, introduced some things, was there to answer questions, but otherwise this was not input from the board or input from our administrative team. It was straight from the community to like, what are our priorities moving forward? What's the mission and what's the priorities that we should be focused on over the next 5 years? And which put together a great document, and the process is all outlined on the Lodi School District website. And there's a strategic planning tab up on the top left-hand side. You click on that, it kind of talks you through the process. And there's a great graphic that kind of lays out the pillars of the priorities that came out of that process. So we developed a mission statement. We had 5 different pillars. One's preparing for the future, which really is exploring career and academic excellence and readiness. Nurturing the whole student, so creating a sense of belonging by growing empathy and compassion and inspiring the emotional, physical well-being of each student. Third pillar is innovative communication connection, so really committing to stakeholders in our community to provide clear and transparent communication and engage our community more. District workforce, again, attracting and retaining exceptional team members and engaging them in continuous improvement. And then finally, operational excellence, planning for our district, incorporating our budgeting process and making sure we have the facilities we need. And across all those is the term innovation. That came up over and over again through the process. And one of the things on the website, you can go through and you can actually go see and look at the raw data of what people actually said at each table. It was all recorded and it's all there for you to look at as well. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can just look into it and look at all that information. So it was a great process that gave us information from the community. Now that the board has adopted it, it now comes back over to my hands and our administrative team to like, okay, now how do we make this happen? Right. So that's the part where I ask for some grace and some patience, because that takes some time. Like, okay, how are we going to put together comprehensive plans to make that happen? And we can't just throw something together. This is going to take some time, but it gives us some direction and gives us things to really focus on, what our priorities for our district. And so that process will be starting here tomorrow when I meet with my administrative team. We'll take our first steps in that process.
Excellent.
But as I spoke about earlier, making decisions and having knowledge and having input on those decisions, this Vince has a copy of it since this is video. This is on the website. These are the 5 pillars he was talking about with the district mission. This is a guide we can use to make those decisions as we go forward. So when there's, should we do this or should we do that? Well, I don't know. What does this say? Let's look at this and see if we can get guidance from there.
Having this, so I served as an alder for 5 years before I was elected mayor. And the only time I hear from community members is with concerns, and that's what we're there for. Absolutely contact us with concerns, questions, whatever. But we in our roles have to think long-term. And one of my biggest frustrations with kind of politics today is if it doesn't look pretty right now, we're not going to tackle it. And we all know you buy a house, you work on your career, you're thinking about more than just today. And for us to have the city is now going through a strategic planning process as well, and to have the opportunity for our community to give us the vision of where we can get you there. But we need to know where you want to go, folks. Right. And it's great when you contact us, but we never get to have these conversations about our hopes and our dreams and what do we want our community to be known as or known for? What do we want people to think about when they hear Lodi? And I've been using the phrase that I think we've been suffering from an identity crisis. We love Susie the Duck, and no shade to Susie, but there honestly is a lot more to Lodi than Susie the Duck. And so the city, we aren't doing the same type of strategic planning, so we're not having these big open public forums, but we posted a survey, and I have the results here, and we'll make sure this is available to folks with our strategic planning as well. There were 5 questions that got posted and reposted on Facebook lots of times. The first one was a multiple choice. But the other 4 were open-ended questions, and we got almost 100 responses, which, and that was in a 10-day period of time. There's so much great energy in this community right now for this community. And reading these comments, there's always a few in there that you're like, ouch, that hurt. Like, we need a new, young, energetic mayor. But Okay, so that was just one comment out of all of these. And we take it with a grain of salt. Someday you'll have a new young mayor.
When that new young mayor runs,
Yes.
then you'll have that.
In the meantime, you're stuck with this old mayor. But the comments are so uplifting. And if you want to see what we all have in common, folks, take a look at the raw data from the school district strategic plan. And when we put this up, take a look at this stuff. There is so much more that brings us together in this community. And it's caring about the environment. It's caring about one another. It's caring about our kids. It's, for the most part, caring about others more than we care about ourselves. And that makes this a really beautiful place to live. So the strategic planning process, while everybody kind of rolls their eyes back in their head and goes, strategic planning, I will admit I'm a policy wonk and I love this stuff, but watching the community that gets built and watching all of these beautiful things happening in all of these silos suddenly start adding up to the same vision. And not that we're all going to be in lockstep. This just at least gives us a destination. And there's a million paths that we can take to get there. But at least we're all kind of headed in the same direction. And that's a really beautiful, beautiful thing. So I look forward to in a month or so when you've had a chance to digest and work on all of this. And you all will be seeing the city's strategic planning documents in August as well. And the council will be given the opportunity to discuss that. It's the strategic planning that we're doing is not a city-sponsored. Some community members, Dick and Jean Madrill, were kind enough to give us the financial support to make the strategic planning process happen. It is not just residents of the city that are taking part in this. This is Lodi means a lot to a lot of people that don't necessarily live in the city proper. So we're through all of these processes, we're just trying to make sure everybody's voice is heard and that we're taking this seriously, but this gives us that road, that gives us the places where we want to put the guardrails up, and then we can figure out the paths to get there. But we've got, and to be able to refer to this document, or the first thing we're doing Saturday morning for the retreat is defining our core values as a community. When you have a set of core values, you can say to one another, this is what our community means, but you can also say, is that really within the core values of our community when, something's happening that isn't quite nice to others or whatever the case may be. I went through a strategic planning process when I was an associate dean at the university, and I had a division of 70 people in umpteen different buildings. And, what do we have in common? And this core values exercise was like the light bulb coming on with people who had to work with one another in very seemingly disconnected ways, suddenly going, oh my goodness, we do have the same expectations of one another, and we do have the same values about students and education and spending taxpayer dollars wisely, all of which sounds nerdy to those of you who aren't in it, but it was a really transformative moment for my division. So I thank everyone who participates. I thank the school board for the courage. I thank my colleagues here for putting up with me doing all of this, and it'll be exciting to see how all of this rolls out and has an impact in our community over the next few years.
Well, I think, as you say, the main thing is we get so caught up in the day to day right now with like COVID and everything else that's going on. We get so caught up in the day to day, we don't take the time to focus on the future, which is where we need to spend some time and energy so we get there. Right. Absolutely. Otherwise, we just end up where we end up. And the strategic plan allows us to do that, makes us pauses us, brings us that information, sets those priorities, and then allows us to plan for the future that we want for our students, or what the future our community wants for our students, and gives our board guidance and gives me guidance of how to get there, and we'll give you guidance and the city council guidance from the city perspective. So it just helps us focus on that future, which is always hard to do because it's so easy to get caught up in today's emails or today's whatever's going on because we're all busy. We're all running that rat race, and taking that time to focus on the future is really important, and this process allows you to do that.
And we have to, in our positions, we're working on street projects 10 years out and engineering for projects that are going to happen in 2025. So it's constantly, and it helps us with what limited resources we have everywhere. And we are all taxpayers in this community as well. It gives us the opportunity to say with those limited dollars that we have that aren't allocated to fixed costs every year to make sure that they're going to get us to the vision, to
Yes.
those guardrails guide the spending decisions, the budget allocations. And I don't know, do you guys, what's your fiscal year? Is it this?
Just started July 1st.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what it was at the university. We're on the calendar year. So we're just going into the budget time of year, which is yay,
Yeah.
such a great time. And if you want to learn about complicated funding, come talk to Vince or Adam or
About
myself
school,
about
yes.
how our budgets are made up and where, when you write that property tax checkout, where that gets divided and how those dollars are come about and all of that good stuff. Public government and public education are incredibly complex funding models. Plus, on top of that, we're always beating the bushes to find grants and other resources, dollars, donations to augment our limited resources. But we are all between, from a city perspective, we are stuck between dwindling shared revenue and the strictest levy limits in the country. And it leaves that much to actually keep up with maintenance costs and everything else. So we end up having to become very creative about revenue sources.
Well, and we're the same way, right? So we have very tight revenue caps, and those aren't moving. So money that's coming towards funding for education is flowing straight to the taxpayer. It's called school funding, but it's not coming to the schools.
Just to make it clear, you will see in the news, you will see people saying that the schools are funded now with this new budget to the 2/3 limit. And in somebody's mind, in some piece of paper, in some fine print, that's true. But in order for us to get that money, we can't. So it's not coming to the schools. It's coming to the schools in name only and then going right to the taxpayers. And taxpayers love tax cuts. And that's what you will see is a tax cut. But the way they're saying it, it is not coming to the schools. So.
And the schools are going to end up having to tap in some of the ESSER funds that were meant for all the costs that we brought in with COVID last year. So for example, the school district, we hired long-term 4 full-time subs because we knew staff would be out because of COVID reasons and people would be quarantined and things like that. We had to have extra bus routes. We did a lot
of extra bus
routes.
routes.
We did different things with ventilation systems. Plexiglass and all those different costs that we had to pull in. And that's what that money was for. And now the next round is a lot more for like learning loss and helping our kids catch up. Well, now we're gonna have to take that money, a one-time, and when you get a one-time use of money, you don't want to use it in staffing. You want to use it on other things. So like fixing a ventilation system, that one-time cost versus paying for a teacher, which is an ongoing cost because it's just going to become a funding cliff because that one-time money goes away. That will be a problem. So it's going to put us in a very difficult position budgetary wise, and we're still working through to analyze everything and where we're going. But you're right, it's a very complicated formula because you feel like you're in Lodi, you feel like your taxes are high because we have a very high property tax, property values. So we get very little state aid. Most of that comes straight from our taxpayer because we are considered in the eyes of the state of Wisconsin a property-rich district. Because we have so much property value behind each of our students. So I mean, sometimes you'll see like we get less state aid than our neighbors. And even though our neighbors may have higher incomes, general incomes or average incomes in their communities, they get more state aid because their property, they don't have a lake. They have like Wisconsin there, and they don't have those property values. Some of the things that make us very proud to live in Lodi, hit us on the other side.
Yes.
So, but again, that's a very complicated formula to walk through.
It's not work like they say it does in the news.
No.
It is very different in reality.
Yeah. Drill down or call one of us. We're happy
to talk to you about it.
And we'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. Here's a pie chart, but it's dry and it's boring, but being informed about where your dollars are coming from or where the dollars are being spent that you cough up a check for every year. And I also ask that hold your elected officials responsible for decisions that are short-term. I have to admit, with the governor signing the budget, I understand kind of the rock and a hard place that he was in, and he was able to reallocate some money to make sure we are getting all the federal funding that we are
Right.
entitled to get for education. So I salute him for doing that.
And still pushing to get more money for education that has not been allocated in this budget.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
just sitting on the table.
Along with federal Medicaid expansion. Don't
Yep.
even get me started. You all hear me kvetch about this on every view from 202. But that being said, a tax rebate is great. We all love getting a little check in the mail or some money deposited in our bank account. But there are a lot of holes in this, figurative and literal holes that need to be plugged. Bridges that need to be repaired. We're facing having 2 railroad bridges removed from Lodi in the next probably 2 to 4 years. And we got to pay a percentage of the cost of removal for those. Road projects, we're talking about Sauk Street and Fair Street. Those are the 2 big things probably happening in 2025 or 2024 and 25. And those are multi-million-dollar street projects. And we're going to have to borrow for the money. And so the tax money is already at the state level. To me, it seems so short-sighted to just immediately turn around and then raise taxes in some way, shape, or form, or fees when we can't keep up with what we're trying to keep up. And cans, folks, you can kick a can down the road till you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it's going to be in worse shape if you don't take care of it when it should be taken care of. And we have been so fixed on, it won't look good if we have to raise anything, that we are falling woefully behind in a myriad of ways. So anyway, so we're happy to be looking long-term. I'll climb down off my soapbox. Happy to be looking long-term and partnering with the community to get where we all envision ourselves going. So I want to turn to give us an opportunity to talk about some of the controversial things that have been swirling with the school board. I was at the school board meeting Monday night for the first half of it and was able to listen to some public input. And I think we've all seen posts on Facebook and social media in general about the furor around equity and critical race theory. And I would like to say, first of all, everybody just take a deep breath, okay? I will remind you of what I said at the beginning of this broadcast, which is we're all trying to do the best for our students and all of that good stuff. But we also want to talk about what equity and what critical race theory mean in reality. And I'd like to give you guys a chance to talk about what's been going on with being on the school board and being the district administrator.
So there was a report out that kind of started this. I shouldn't say this is a nationwide issue, right? So
right.
You look at different schools across the country. There's people who are asking questions about, are you teaching critical race theory and equating critical race theory to equity? Critical race theory is a framework of law to look at institutions. It's not a curriculum that is taught anywhere. And I don't know how equity ever got tied to critical race theory.
And critical race theory lives at the graduate level.
Yeah.
It's taught, I learned it in my graduate coursework or law school.
So equity is not anything new in the school district of Lodi. I mean, this is starting my 14th year as an administrator in the school district of Lodi, and we've been working on equity in all sorts of different ways for all the years I've been here. We're working on the district I was at before as well. And really, when I talk about equity, I talk about creating belonging, right? Our job is we are a public school, and we need to make sure that school feels safe and comfortable for all of our students. All means all. So we need to work very hard to make sure that we understand what our students need, right? In Wisconsin, we have the largest gap between our students of color and our white students when it comes to achievement. We have large gaps with students with disabilities and non-disabled students. We have large gaps between economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged students. So we need to work on those things, and we're tasked to work on those things. Our community wants us to work on those things. Well, we need to make sure that our staff understand those things. So when we talk about equity work in the school district of Lodi, and again, there was a report out that Vince was doing that secretly without the board knowing, which is not true. And it's not something we were doing with students. We were working with staff. And the best way I can explain it is, I grew up in Roxbury, Wisconsin, and I grew up with a lot of people who look like me, talk like me, and I'll be honest, most of them had the same last name as me. Right? If you've ever been to Roxbury, it's true.
Can't swing a dead cat without Vince Bruenig.
So our school is becoming more diverse, and we need to teach our staff what that means and what it's like to be a person of color in this community, or what it's like to be someone who is gay in this community, or what it's like to be disabled in this community. And that helps them connect with students and create that belonging, which research shows very clearly helps our students do better, right? And by doing that, we don't take things away from other kids, right? Equity is giving kids glasses who need glasses. We don't give everybody glasses. It's giving wheelchairs to kids who need wheelchairs. We don't give everybody's wheelchairs. One of the best examples of equity we had was when we started our Bigger, Faster, Stronger program at the high school, and it was for boys and girls, and our girls wouldn't join. And we determined the girls didn't feel comfortable in that weight room because they didn't have the skills and didn't feel like they should belong. So we created a girls only class that didn't take anything away from the boys. We had a girls only class, taught the girls the skills that they needed. And now we have that every year. But after that, they take that class, the girls jump in right with the boys, and they're in BF. That is equity. We are teaching about belonging and making sure that we have an understanding as we become more and more diverse, and our staff is not very diverse. The idea that we are teaching people that they should feel guilty because of the color of their skin could be nothing further from the truth. And again, I've been in this district for 14 years. I didn't change when I moved from the high school to the district office, right? But it has become a big political wedge issue in this country. And it's a fear issue. And that's what happens when you start talking about race. You bring up fear, pieces of fear. And there's fear that I'm going to make that Vince or the school is indoctrinating our kids and having these discussions. We don't. We are not. Our staff works very hard to be neutral on any topics. Now, obviously, when certain things happen, right, when the George Floyd was killed last year and there was protests going on, there was a lot of conversation, like how are we going to help our students understand what's going on this summer, coming back with COVID and that happening. So there was a lot of conversation that had to happen, right? And then there was an election that went on, and there was a lot of racial overtones back and forth in that election. There was a insurrection at the Capitol, and then there was the murder conviction of Derek Chauvin. So there's been a lot of things that have happened this year regarding race. So, for example, we had a records request that asked for all emails from all of our staff, which is about 250 people, that had the term either racism, white privilege, racism, privilege, or white supremacy. And that generated about 16,000 emails in and out of our district. We send over 1 million emails a year out of our district. To think that with all those things I just got done mentioning, that 1.6% of our emails might have had the topic of one of those things in there somewhere, and some of them are not even related to that. Like every time I send something to an attorney, it has in the bottom, this is privileged information. That pulls up. Right? Every time I get a news feed that has the word race in it, or racism, that pulls up. So I know there's a feeling that we're hiding things. What I always encourage teachers or parents to do, if you have a concern, something happens in your classroom, your child comes home and has a question, call your child's teacher. Again, as I said earlier, we want to partner with you with your child's education, right? And also, I ask you, just like every time your child came to school when I was a high school principal and told me something, I don't always take everything they tell me about what happens at your house without talking to you and getting the full story, right? Sometimes as adults, sometimes our children don't always give us the full story, right? So making sure that you're having that conversation with your kid, but then following up with the teacher. The teacher wants to work with you to develop that relationship to make sure that we are supporting you and your child. And then if you have a concern, pull in your child's principal, and share that concern with them. But please make sure you're having those conversations with the teacher. I can't tell you the amount of times when I was a high school principal, when I would have a parent call me and be upset about something and want to meet, and I would bring the teacher and the parent together, and we would meet and talk, and they're like, "Oh, that's not what I heard," right? And it would be like and it wasn't like somebody wasn't being honest. It was just a misrepresentation. There was miscommunication going back and forth because it's a game of telephone, right? And you're hearing it third person or fourth person. Have that conversation. Or if you have a concern, call me. Come to my office and let's sit down and have a conversation. Because what happens is people email me and I'll email them back, and pretty soon there's long email chains going on and we kind of forget where we even started. And it's much easier to have a conversation and sit down either on a phone or in person and have that conversation. Because bottom line, we're responsible for every single student that comes here. And we all means all. And we need to make sure we're creating belonging for all of our students. And all this stuff about CRT, I didn't even know what CRT was until that news report came out. I'd heard about it in graduate school. I'd forgotten about it. We are working on equity this year. One of the things that we worked on was a windows and mirrors activity. So making sure that all of our students show up in our curriculum, because our kids can't be invisible during the day. If they never see themselves in the curriculum, they become marginalized, right? So if we had all of our books just had male lead characters or all the things that we had, that's not okay. We need female characters in there as lead characters. We need other people of color. We need all those things. We need to look at our walls and make sure that everybody's represented. When we put together our STEAM lab at the high school, one of the first things we saw was they sent all these pictures along with it, and it was all white scientists, all white old men. And we had great white old men, but we also we want to get our girls in STEAM education. So we need to put some female artists and female engineers and things like that in there and have a balance, not one or the other. We're not taking away from what was happening, what these white inventors did, but we also need to make sure we have female inventors up there so people can look at that and go, I could do that too. And that's the type of stuff we were looking at doing. And that's the type of stuff we're going to continue to work on doing. We are not trying to, again, making people feel bad about the color of their skin or make people feel bad about what happened in our history, but they need to also know what happened in our history and understand that piece. So I'm sorry, kind of went out there.
No, that's great. That was really helpful.
Well, it's I'm getting a lot of emails about this, and people don't quite understand it. And the problem is we lump everything in the CRT. We hear critical race theory, and and the last thing I heard was like social emotional learning is now getting lumped into the CRT, and that's our social emotional learning is coming back to this nurturing the whole child, is teaching kids to take turns, teaching kids to have empathy, teaching kids to share their feelings. And instead of just grabbing a piece of paper, or ripping up their paper when they're frustrated, like sharing why. All the things you teach your children at home that we want to reinforce.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with CRT. People are using it for every little thing, and it's really a framework used, as you said, at the graduate school level, and it's not used in K-12 education. Our equity, and I know I sat down with somebody earlier this year, and we talked about it. We have a totally different term. My understanding of what equity is and your understanding of what equity is totally different. I said, absolutely, right? We're using the same term, but we have different vocabularies, right? So what you're saying equity, your definition of equity is totally different than mine. Come listen to what our definition of equity is. And that person was like, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. I understand that. Now, did they totally agree with everything I said? No. And that's okay. We're not going to agree on everything. But bottom line, the goal is we all have what's best for kids in the middle of the table. And as long as we sit around the table thinking we're trying to do what's best for all of our kids, it's not best for all of our kids to come out of a Lodi high school as liberals or conservative. It's not best. It's best that we come out with the wide range of people that go in, and they come out and understand that most of us are not all liberal, all conservative. We're all over the board, depending on what the issue is. And we want to teach our kids, is this mission statement that was developed, going back to that, the last line of that, we have an inclusive environment to create innovative problem solvers, right? It talks about that critical thinking skill that we need to teach kids to think for themselves. and give them the skills to do that. We don't want to teach them what to think. That's not our role as a school district. Our school district is to teach them how to critically take information, look at the information that's presented to us, evaluate the source of that information that I'm getting. Is it on Facebook? Is it on Twitter? Is it on a reputable news site? Where am I getting this information? And then evaluate the truth of that information. And is it backed up by some journalism somewhere else? Or is it someone's opinion? And we really need to make sure that we are doing that. We teach our kids that because we're struggling as a society with
Absolutely.
So I want
Go ahead.
to keep it going.
I made a
want to
note.
go a couple things here. So
Yeah, sorry.
no, it's
No,
fine.
that was great, Vince.
Is that education changes, right? So I'm a scientist, and in science, we're constantly looking for the new thing. We're constantly discovering new things and moving forward. And so people think, okay, in the science, that's okay. It's always going to change and it's always going to be different. But what you also have to realize is in all forms of education, all things that are being taught educationally is also changing, right? The history that I learned when I was a kid is the same history, right? But the way we've looked at it and reflect upon it, and the people's understanding of it, the scholars' understanding of that history has changed greatly since I was a kid and learned that in K-12. It's always in influx and always growing and always getting bigger and better. I mean, I'm also an artist, and when we talked about art history and what people thought, what scholars thought about different pieces of art from Egypt or Mesopotamia or whatever, when I was in college, and now what we think about them today, 20 years later, is just night and day difference, right? But 20 years ago when I was in college, we were taught this. And now today, it's totally different. And so education, the things that we learn in education and teach in education change continually.
It's the name. I realized this when all of my academic majors changed their name.
Yes.
So I got a degree in ag journalism, but now it's life sciences communications.
Exactly, yes.
And it used to be higher ed admin, and now it's educational leadership and policy analysis,
And then the other point is, right now, Vince is the district administrator and I'm a school board president and Ann is the mayor. But these kids that we're teaching are going to enter the world and they're going to become the school board president and the district administrator and the mayor. And they're going to take over for us. And so we want them prepared to do those jobs.
Absolutely.
They need to understand how the world works.
And we have to own the fact that we are a 91% white community.
Yes.
So for really 91% of us, we all look the same for the most part. For the 9%, it can be a pretty jarring existence. And unless you have walked in the shoes, unless you have been somewhere where you're the only white person or the only blonde person, and I've been in lots of those situations, you start to develop some empathy for what it's like. I used to have students at the university I would advise, and they'd be like, I'm in a lecture of 400. My roommates don't show up, nobody knows, but I'm the one black person in that room, and you can bet the professor knows if I'm there or not. It's a level of almost nakedness that people who are, so we have to own the fact that for 91% of us, this is a pretty great experience. For the other 9%, most of the time it might be a pretty good experience too, but there are times when being a person of color or being different in a community like this can be incredibly difficult. The other thing you have to keep in mind, folks, is our kids are growing up here, but they ain't going to stay here. The vast majority of our kids are at least going to go away for a few years, whether it's to Madison or points far beyond. They're not going to be in communities that are 91% white anymore. Our kids have to know how to relate to people who are very different from them. And I will tell you, much of the joy in my life has been meeting people from different backgrounds and coaching and mentoring students who came from all corners of the world or from my own backyard, but who were given the opportunity to understand the potential within themselves and raised with the confidence to move in the world knowing that their worth is not in question. That's what this new mission statement for the school district does, that we want to help every student know their potential and their worth and that
And
they
their
belong.
beauty.
And they're absolutely, we were all created in extraordinary ways. Let your freak flag fly, folks, and embrace it and be comfortable with it. And that's all we want. That's really, it kind of boils down to that.
Well, it connects back into, like we talked before we got on, was like the Lodi Pride campaign. It really
Yes.
great, connects right back into it. We can be proud. We should be proud of all the great things that happen in Lodi
And they're
that you talked about at the
myriad.
beginning of this conversation. But we have to also look at how we can be better. So we got to continue with that Lodi Pride, and again, we see it when you go down the streets and you see the Lodi Pride signs out and you see the banners, and those things are so important, not only for our students to see that there's pride in our community, but it's also like when we talk about, again, going back to the strategic plan, district workforce. When we attract workers, I attract staff. There's many times that I have sat down with a staff member a few years after I've hired them, and they'll be like, you know, one of the reasons I moved here, or I've decided to take this job, I had competing offers, is I drove through the town and saw all those Lodi Pride signs, and I'm like, I want to work here.
That's awesome.
Right? So we all play a role in that. And again, we are proud of what we do here in Lodi, and we should be. And that doesn't mean we can't get better, right? We have Lodi Pride, but there's things we got to continue to work on. Right? We continue to grow. If you're not growing, you're going in the opposite direction. So we have to continue to grow, but we got to continue to really focus on that Lodi Pride as we move forward and build that community back up and continue to be the community that we're all so proud of, and display that because it's important. It's how we get. It helps us feel proud of our community, but it also draws people into our community, and people want to live here.
Absolutely. And I want to circle back to something that Vince said, and I've brought this up many times, and we talked about this before the show tonight, but the rumor mill, and we all love to gossip. Let's just face it, there's sort of this inner human pleasure that we get out of gossiping. But gossip can get pretty destructive, and rumors can get pretty destructive. And Vince and Adam and I just want to say, if you have questions, either email us or pick up the phone. Come and visit us. I can't tell you, once we sit down and have these conversations, there's so much more that we have in common, and we get a new understanding from each other. We can learn from you all what you're struggling with, and you can learn from us about stuff that, you know, we're all icebergs, okay? We see 10% of what everyone in the world is dealing with, and you have no idea what somebody's day-to-day life is like, what happens when their door closes at home. The fact that we can sit down and have these conversations, we should take advantage of that. And Vince and I and Adam would much rather spend a half an hour with you on the phone or an hour in person with you having a cup of coffee to discuss issues than to sit and watch misinformation and rumors and conjectures and assumptions getting tossed around on social media. If there's one dream I have for our community, it's that we just take a minute when some crap pops up and think, is this possibly true? And if I have questions about it, who's in authority that I can reach out to and ask, rather than ask. So I read a book where the ongoing gag in this book was using the word assume and never assume, because it makes an ass out of you and me. And that is so true. And I catch myself all the time saying, don't assume things. What were you going to say?
I so appreciate it when people have, like, I just saw this on, for example, there was a rumor going around, and then a petition going around that we were going to remove all the bathroom signs in all of our bathrooms in the district. And I so appreciated people even like, seriously, Vince, this can't be true, right? I'm like, no, it's not true. And then somebody, well, I went to the primary school and saw there's no signs out on the outside of the bathroom. Like, yeah, you have to walk through by the sinks, and that's right there. Because when you're 4 years old and 5 years old, sometimes you have a hard time remembering from this far 10 feet later which one I'm supposed to go in. So it's closer to where you have to go through the door. So I read an article today, and this is how it came up, by Kristen Radke, who talked about social media rewards our meanest, least empathetic selves and pushes us towards extreme positions. And the article was really about gossiping and how in middle school you learn how to gossip, and it kind of helps, you're not supposed to, but it kind of helps teach you, kind of what you're supposed to do, and gets you into what other people's lives are like. But those were small potatoes. But with social media, in the context of social media, this benign exaggeration of gossip can morph into catastrophic untruths that just grow into bigger things. So Again, social media can be a great place. It's a powerful tool and can amplify your voice in great ways, but it can also do a lot of damage. So again, before you repost something or things like that, and it seems like that, I have a hard time believing that that's true. Reach out to somebody and ask the question. And again, if it's true and we've made a mistake, then absolutely, I have no problem with that. But I just ask for people to ask that question beforehand because it's really important.
Absolutely. And I'll refer to the strategic plan, the center column, the center pillar is innovative communications connection. And I don't want to speak for Vince, but I know one of the things we struggle with constantly is how do we get information out to people and how do we hear back from people? And we used to, growing up here, the Lodi Enterprise was our newspaper, and the editors and publishers were community members, and they had the Who's Visiting column. Yeah. So you wanted to get the Enterprise because you wanted to see who was here visiting whom. And if you didn't get the Enterprise, you missed out on a whole lot of stuff. We still have an Enterprise, and it's a great newspaper. We have our digital Lodi Valley Chronicle, which is a blessing, and it's community driven, and Blaze grew up here, and that is a godsend. But we all crave for a central place to go. And this came out in the school district strategic planning. So I want to tell you all, we're working on it. We're working, the school district and the city are partnering. We're working on having a website that isn't just for school or city, but it is a community website where we can celebrate the wonderful things happening in our community, where we can go to one place to click to calendars, and it's a clearinghouse, and it's not Facebook. I don't know about anybody else, but none of my family members are on Facebook. They refuse to get accounts. So when they go to look for a restaurant or something and their only option is Facebook, it's really frustrating. There are people who have chosen not to be on social media, and we want access to information to be as barrier-free as possible. So we're trying to get a website together that will serve that function for our community. But the communication is a constant struggle, and we're all really busy. And for some reason, we think email and texting is just so much quicker than making a phone call or coming to visit, when those latter two things can be a lot more rewarding and a lot more productive than the ongoing email and text chain.
But again, email.
Yes, we'll take it. We'll take it. If that's
Any
what you got
form of
time for,
communication,
contact us,
yes.
please.
Any form.
All right, so we've been talking your ears off for an hour now, so we kind of need to wrap up. I do want to, as always, put a plug in for thinking about running for a local elected position.
Sure.
Spring elections are not that far away.
Quiet.
Mr. Steinberg, I'm kidding. In December already, you're going to have to circulate nomination papers. So if you're thinking about running for the school board, for the city council, for the town board, for mayor, this position is up for re-election in the spring. You got to circulate nomination papers, and you guys have 2 positions.
We will have 2 positions that are up for election. I don't know if I haven't talked to those 2 people if they're planning on running for re-election or not, but we'll have 2 positions up, and anybody who's interested in running can come in and meet with me, and I will walk you through what it's like to be a board member. I can even walk you through the information I gave our currently new elected board members and walk them through, just to kind of give them that background information so you have an idea of exactly what it is to be a school board member. And we will help you every step of the way in getting your paperwork, showing you how to get the paperwork filled out to make sure that it's as easy as possible for you. But we also want to make sure you know what you're walking into as well. So I would be more than happy to meet with anybody, and I know Adam would be the same. Anybody who is interested in running for school board, I can tell you from the administrative perspective what it's like, and Adam can tell you from actually the board members' perspective what it's like.
Over the last 8 years I've been on the board, I probably talked to 20 people about running for school board. And they've either come to me or I've gone to them and said, this is what it is. Here's what it's all about. Or they've asked me and I told them. And so happy to do that to anybody.
Excellent. And we'll have 3 city council positions open. I think the town board will have 2 positions board. And the county board is all up for re-election this next year. So we need great people at the county level too. And our government, our school district, all of this is only as good as the people that commit themselves to get involved. And,
Yes.
We try to streamline things as much as possible so it's not a really overly burdensome time commitment. it is a time commitment,
Yes.
but there are ways and strategies that we can help you deal with it and manage it. And so there,
If you want to dip your toe in the water a little easier and not maybe go to the school board or the city level or the town level, the school district has the OSC charter school within it, a project-based school, and they are looking for board members.
oh, that's good.
So you could get on that board if you wanted to.
That's excellent. And out of the city strategic planning, I'm hoping we will have some committees that will spring up, community-driven committees that will help us realize, not leave everything up to government and the school board, but it's going to take all of us to make our visions a reality. If you're intimidated by the process or circulating nomination, I will go door to door with you. Any of our alders, any of the sitting board members, if you know one of them, just call them and ask them. And please do not think that you have nothing to contribute.
No, you do.
If
For
you
sure
live in
you
this
do.
community, you have something to contribute to our community.
Yep.
as an elected official. So don't be intimidated by it. We need as many sectors in our community represented at these tables. Our decisions are only going to be as rich as the folks sitting around the table making those decisions. So we want you to run. We want you to get elected. We want you to get involved.
It's a hard job, but it's a rewarding job.
It is. It's
Right.
incredibly rewarding. And the cool thing is, so I ran for the assembly. Between you all and me, I'm really glad I didn't get elected, because doing this job and looking out the window and seeing the flags that our community made happen on Main Street, the planters on Main Street, what we're doing makes a difference in our own backyard.
Yeah.
People that watch this know I'm a Schitt's Creek fan. Schitt's Creek, they created the community they wanted to have. And that's what we get to do here. So when you get involved in one of these boards, you get to make that happen. Is it messy? Hell yes. Is it frustrating? Oh, good dog, yes. But you're giving back, and you will see a difference, and we will appreciate you getting involved. Okay, so climbing down off that soapbox. Do you guys have anything to add for that one?
No, I think you
That's
covered
great.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Wonderful. All right. I think we've wasted enough of everyone's time. Thank you for being with us tonight. Adam and Vince, I'd love to have you come back
You bet.
a couple times a year so
Sure.
we can have this conversation.
Sure.
We'll keep you all updated. You can keep our feet to the fire with our
Mhm.
strategic plans.
Yep.
Maybe Vince and Adam, once the school year gets started, we can come back and see what happened with operationalizing
Yep.
the strategic planning, and
Absolutely.
we'll have updates from the city. And I want to remind folks, we are so working together these days. Our community pool opened because of a partnership between the school district and the city, and we're excited, and it's benefiting our community in a whole lot of ways. So keep our feet to the fire, reach out to us. Thanks for tuning in, and see you. Oh, in 2 weeks, come back. We're going to talk about fair maps and redistricting. Thanks.
Good night.
All right.
Awesome.